Well, it's official. Donald Trump and Republicans in Congress no longer have plausible deniability. They are, in fact, gearing up to take away the healthcare of millions of Americans in order to pay for tax cuts for billionaires, a move that will devastate American families and communities across the nation. But it can be really hard for people to conceptualize what this level of devastation would look like, so I want to lay it out for you. Despite Donald Trump's repeated campaign promises that he would not cut funding for Medicaid or Medicare, the budget proposal that Republicans in Congress are currently pushing includes as much as $2.3 trillion in cuts, including up to $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid funding. I know that was a mouthful, and it can be really hard to visualize what these kind of numbers mean in practicality for your life and the lives of people that you love. So let's talk about it. Before Barack Obama signed the Affordable Care Act into law in 2010, Medicaid health insurance was primarily available to children, disabled people, and pregnant women. Adults who weren't pregnant or disabled typically did not qualify for Medicaid. When the ACA became law, it was left up to the states on whether they wanted to expand Medicaid. In the states that did, all adults with income levels below 133% of the federal poverty line, or about $21,000 per year on average, would now be eligible to enroll in Medicaid. Typically, Medicaid is paid for through a combination of federal funding and state funding. When states expanded Medicaid eligibility, the federal government made a deal with them. Typically, the federal government covers somewhere between 50 to 75% of the cost for Medicaid recipients, with the states covering the remainder of the cost. But in this case, the federal government agreed to increase the amount that they were covering for the newly eligible populations, up to 90% for that specific group, so that states would only have to cover as little as 10% of the cost of expanding Medicaid to cover the working poor. So since 2010, 40 states plus the District of Columbia adopted Medicaid expansion. The benefits of expanding Medicaid have been damn near instantaneous and really incredible. Expanding Medicaid has reduced the mortality rate in working age adults and in infants. It has provided critical funding to rural hospitals in danger of closing, and it has improved the quality of care and access to medical services for millions of Americans. Expanding Medicaid has also improved the financial security of American families, leading to a reduction in the average medical debt of an American citizen by more than $1,000. We've even seen a reduction in evictions among low-income renters as a direct result of expanding Medicaid. The benefits that expansion had on our communities genuinely cannot be overstated. Even people who are not personally on Medicaid have benefited from Medicaid expansion. Expanding Medicaid reduced uncompensated care by 55%, or $17.9 billion in 2016 alone, meaning that everyone's healthcare got cheaper because the cost of uncompensated care gets passed along to patients. So when that cost goes down, so too does the cost of your healthcare. On top of all of that, Medicaid, including its expansion, is extremely popular with the American people. Even a majority of Republican voters hold positive views of Medicaid, with 64% of Republican voters saying that they have a very favorable or somewhat favorable view of Medicaid. And among the American electorate as a whole, those numbers are even more significant. 77% of Americans say that they view Medicaid positively. So what happens next if Republicans gut federal funding for Medicaid? Well, it's not great. Of the 40 states that have expanded Medicaid, 9 of them have trigger laws that require termination of the expansion of Medicaid if the share of federal funding drops. That means that Republican cuts to Medicaid funding at the federal level would almost instantaneously result in millions of people in those 9 states losing access to health care. But in addition to those 9 states, there are a lot of other states that, despite not having a trigger law that does it automatically, will almost certainly eliminate their Medicaid expansion the second they are given an excuse to do so. Let's take my home state of Oklahoma as an example. It took more than a decade and taking it to a vote of the people to finally expand Medicaid in Oklahoma in 2021. Elected leaders across the state, which is ruled by a conservative supermajority, did everything in their power to block expansion, despite the fact that the state had the second highest rate of uninsured adults in the nation, with more than 1 in 10 Okies uninsured at the time. There is no doubt in my mind that lawmakers in Oklahoma would take the very first opportunity that they could to gut Medicaid in the state, and a whole lot of other conservative states will follow suit. That is why we cannot allow Congress to cut funding for the program just to pay for more tax cuts for their billionaire benefactors. Millions of lives are on the line if they do.